Hey everyone, tonight, we're going somewhere most folks never expect to find themselves deep in the heart of betrayal, disguised as love. The kind that doesn't come from strangers, but from the people you raised, trusted, and would have given the world to. You probably wouldn't survive this if it happened to you. Not without coming out hardened, maybe even a little colder, but definitely smarter. So, before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I'm doing here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I always love knowing who's awake with me at this hour. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some soft background noise. And let's begin tonight's journey. The kettle was still whistling when I realized my whole life had been quietly unraveling behind my back. I remember it clear as crystal sitting at my little kitchen table, the sunlight creeping through the lace curtains, a half-stirred mug of chamomile tea beside me. The kind of peaceful moment that if I'd known what was coming, I might have clung to just a little longer. The phone call wasn't supposed to be for me. It was Greg, my son, my only child, on the line with Mia, his wife. They'd asked me to stay on hold while they sorted something out with the mortgage lender. And of course I stayed. Why wouldn't I? I had just wired over the final payment on their house. Every last cent, the house I helped them buy for their family, for my little grandson's future. It was meant to be a gift, a legacy. I didn't know. It was the setup. The laughter came first, soft, like distant thunder rolling through the speaker. Then Greg's voice, still so familiar, it ached even as the words sliced clean through me. She's too dumb to know what's really happening. He chuckled. Casual, careless, the way people talk when they think no one's listening. I froze. My teaspoon clattered to the floor, but I barely heard it. Mia's voice chimed in light, airy, full of amusement. Honestly, she practically handed it all to us. It's pathetic. I couldn't move. The air in my kitchen thickened, pressing against my chest like fog rolling in. She thinks she's helping. Greg snorted. It's perfect. As long as she keeps signing where we tell her who cares what she thinks. My hand hovered over the phone, trembling. I could have ended the call right then. Part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't heard it, to cling to the illusion like a kid with a blanket too threadbare to keep them warm. But I didn't. I listened. I let every ugly word wash over me cold and steady until the realization sank so deep it rooted itself in my bones. My son, the boy I raised alone after his father, Warren, passed too young. The man I trusted with everything I had left saw me as a tool, a means to an end, nothing more. The betrayal wasn't loud. It didn't roar in like a hurricane. It settled quietly like the slow, icy seep of winter through old window frames. I pressed the end button. The line went dead. The kettle was still shrieking on the stove. I turned it off with shaking hands, my gaze falling to the little glass jar Mia had given me last Christmas, lavender tea, her favorite. Even that felt false now. Like every smile, every grateful hug, every sweet "we couldn't have done this without you" that came dripping off her tongue. And I had believed them. I thought I was part of their foundation. The steady hand on their shoulder. The loving grandmother. The proud mother woven into the fabric of their family. Instead, I was their mark. The floral curtains at the window fluttered slightly in the breeze. My home, the one Warren and I built with sweat and saving, and Sunday afternoons fixing leaky faucets, suddenly felt unfamiliar. I set my teacup down. It wobbled slightly, catching a streak of sunlight on the rim. Not anymore, I whispered. It wasn't rage. Not yet. That would come later. It was something colder, sharper. Like glass, smooth on the surface, but liable to slice deep if you weren't careful. Earlier that same morning, I'd stood at the bank smiling, shoulders light with pride, watching the final payment on their mortgage process. The young teller, Ellie, I think her name was, handed me the receipt with a bright smile. She probably thought I was just another sweet grandmother helping her kids get a leg up. If only she knew. I drove to their house afterward, imagining Greg's grateful grin, Mia's teary hug, my grandson toddling through the living room without a care in the world. It wasn't just a house to me. It was love, stability, the future Warren and I always dreamed for them. And they turned it into a con. Funny thing is, I used to hear Warren's voice in my head whenever I worried I was being too generous. His gentle teasing warnings. Don't spoil them too much, Helen. They gotta stand on their own. I'd silenced that voice. I thought love meant sacrifice. Turns out, it means respect. And respect, they threw that away the moment they cashed in on my trust. The betrayal was quiet. But my response? It wouldn't be. You ever look back and realize the red flags weren't waving? They were practically smacking you in the face. Yeah, that was me. See, Greg and Mia didn't pull me into this overnight. It was slow, like boiling a frog. You don't feel the water heating up until it's too late. After Warren passed 7 years ago now, the house was too quiet. 41 years of marriage, and suddenly the bed felt twice as big, the dinner table empty, the sound of the television just sad. And Greg, he filled that space. At first it felt like love, like the kind of closeness we'd always had when he was a kid. He called every day, stopped by with groceries, fixed things around the house. He even said it himself once, standing by Warren's old workbench in the garage. We're a team now, Mom. You, me, and Mia. Family sticks together. I clung to that like a lifeline. Looking back, it was the first thread in the web. The money part didn't come right away. They eased me into it. Mom, it's just a signature, Greg had said over coffee one Sunday. We're still saving, but this little loan helps us with the down payment. You'll be co-owner, of course. It's basically your house, too. Mia sat beside him, hands clasped like some perfect daughter-in-law from a Hallmark movie. We could never do this without you, Helen, she said, eyes glassy with gratitude. It means everything, I signed. Warren would have asked questions, pulled out paperwork, cross-referenced fine print. But me, I wanted to believe in my son. The second time, it was for renovations. The nursery. Mia explained, flipping through Pinterest boards of muted yellows and tiny woodland creatures. This is your grandson's room, Helen. Your legacy. Legacy. That word landed heavy. I signed again. The third time, a business loan. Greg, with his charm dialed to 11, sold me dreams of financial freedom. This is for the whole family, Mom. You'll benefit too. By then, it was practically routine. They fed me love, respect, shared dreams, and I lapped it up. The power of attorney was framed the same way. Just for emergencies, Greg had said. You trust me, right? Of course I did. The dinners, the weekly calls, the birthday gifts, the we couldn't do this without yous, they never let up. Mia once brought over homemade banana bread and a card that said, We're so blessed to have you. I still have it somewhere in the kitchen drawer. Probably right next to the pile of lies they've been stacking behind my back. You ever hear that saying, con artists don't just fool their victims, they make them grateful? Yeah, that was me. And you know what? Part of me saw it. The hesitation. The quiet moments when Warren's voice whispered, Slow down, Helen. Don't sign what you don't understand. But I didn't want to see it. I wanted to be needed, to be part of something again. Grief makes you stupid sometimes. I let them frame every step as family teamwork. When I finally wired that last mortgage payment standing in the bright, sterile bank lobby, I wasn't just paying off their house. I was paying for an illusion. Their house looked like a magazine cover when I pulled into the driveway that morning. Fresh paint, neat flower beds, a little blue swing hanging from the oak tree out front. I remember thinking, it's perfect. Mia was folding tiny baby clothes on the couch when I walked in. Greg came downstairs with my grandson barely walking, giggling, blissfully unaware of the grown-up messes being woven around him. You didn't have to do this, Mom Greg said, grinning that same half-smile that always reminded me of Warren. But we're so grateful. I'd waved him off. You're my family. That's what matters. And it did. Until that call. Until I heard them laughing. Until every cozy memory soured like old milk. That house, their house, our house, suddenly felt like a stage set. The nursery, the framed family photos, the swing out front. Props, carefully arranged to distract me while they siphoned off my trust, my money, my security. I let them, but not anymore. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the little lavender candle Mia had gifted me last Christmas. Its gentle flicker looked innocent. So had they. Grief makes you vulnerable. But anger, it makes you sharp. And I was done being blind. The next time they saw me, I wouldn't be the woman they thought they could manipulate. I'd be the mother they underestimated, and the one about to take everything back. It's strange how betrayal doesn't explode all at once. It unfolds, layer by layer. And when you finally start peeling those layers back, it's hard to stop. I sat at my kitchen table for what must have been an hour, just staring at my phone. My tea had gone cold, the soft ticking of the wall clock filled the quiet, and Willow, my tabby, watched me with those big green eyes from the windowsill. She always had that look like she knew more than she let on. The phone screen still glowed faintly with the last call log. Greg's name stared back at me. If only a name could show its true weight, the weight of every lie, every time I signed, without reading, every time I let myself believe I was still part of their story. And that's when the thought hit me. The files. See, Mia had set me up with this cloud account system months ago. For transparency, she'd said, flashing that practiced smile of hers. You'll be able to see everything, Helen. No surprises. Funny, isn't it? They counted on me never looking. On me being too trusting, too old, too tired. Well, today I looked. I opened my laptop. The screen flickered to life, and I logged into the account Mia had so kindly set up for me. It was all their neatly organized folders labeled with sweet, misleading titles. Mortgage documents. Savings. Baby's future fund. It all looked normal. Until it didn't. There was a folder I didn't recognize, business ventures. I clicked it, and what I found made my stomach twist tighter than a sailor's knot. There were accounts under my name. Not just co-signatures. Not just joint ownership. Full-blown guarantor documents for high-risk investments, business loans, crypto portfolios, even something called angel funding with my name listed as the primary investor. I scrolled through pages of transaction histories, wire transfers, brokerage activity. All of it linked to me, to my identity, my pristine credit, my trust. It wasn't just bad judgment. It was calculated. They'd built a financial empire with me as the foundation, and I hadn't even known I was part of it. And if any of it collapsed, it wouldn't be their names on the line. It would be mine. The room seemed to shrink around me. The walls, the family photos, the cozy kitchen I'd loved for decades, it all closed in like a trap. I stood up. My hands were shaking, not with fear this time, with something colder, sharper. That quiet, clean anger that creeps in when you've been played for a fool, but you're finally awake. I went to the small study off the kitchen, the one Warren used to keep so organized back when we still did things the old-fashioned way. Paper copies, file folders, everything neatly labeled. The filing cabinet sat against the far wall untouched since he passed. I opened it. Inside were the old insurance policies, bank statements, tax records, all of it still in Warren's neat handwriting. Meticulous, methodical. He never trusted digital files completely. Paper carries weight, he always said. For the first time, I understood what he meant. I pulled out the records, compared them to what I'd found online. And the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. I'd handed them every tool they needed to bleed me dry. The power of attorney, the joint accounts, the loans. I thought I was helping my family, but they weren't building a future for our family. They were building a future for themselves on my back. A small, bitter laugh escaped my lips. I should have seen it. The signs had been there for years. The charm, the flattery that we're in this together speeches. And every time I hesitated, Mia would swoop in with banana bread, or Greg would drop by with the baby grinning, saying, "We couldn't do this without you, Mom." I thought it was love. It was leverage, but not anymore. I printed every document, downloaded backups, labeled everything meticulously, because if they wanted a paper trail, I'd give them one. The old me. She might have cried, panicked, begged for answers, but I wasn't her anymore. I was the woman they underestimated, and they were about to learn I never made the same mistake twice. There's a certain calm that comes over you once the shock wears off. Not peace, but a sharp, quiet clarity. Like when the storm sirens stop blaring and you realize the damage isn't coming, it's already here. That's exactly where I found myself the morning after I uncovered what Greg and Mia had done. The kettle clicked off behind me as I sat at the kitchen table, a fresh stack of printed documents spread out like puzzle pieces. Willow. My cat hopped onto the chair beside me, curling up with a sigh that somehow felt more human than feline. Her green eyes followed me quietly, judging as if to say, "Took you long enough to see it, Helen." I didn't argue. The files told the story plainly now. The investments, the unauthorized loans, the forged approvals hidden beneath the sugar-sweet language of family trust. They'd built an entire financial empire on the back of my name, my credit, my grief, and my silence. But grief doesn't last forever. And neither does silence. I made a pot of tea, no honey this time. I didn't want anything sweet dulling the edge of my thoughts. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened Warren's old leather notebook. It still smelled faintly of coffee and ink, the scent of careful planning of protection. He'd kept it obsessively organized notes from when we bought the house, insurance, details, passwords, even reminders scribbled in the margins like check Helen's pension forms by April. Always thinking ahead, always watching my back. And what had I done? Handed our hard-earned safety net to the very people who saw me as a convenience. I pulled out a fresh notebook, started my own list. Known accounts, check. Loans, check. Unfamiliar business ventures, check. Outstanding questions, too many to count. As I scribbled, I could practically hear Warren's voice in the back of my mind. "Don't sign what you don't understand, Helen." God, I missed him. His steadiness, his skepticism, the way he never let sentiment cloud his judgment, especially with money. But maybe some of that had finally rubbed off on me. Too late to prevent the damage, maybe. But not too late to fix it. I turned to the laptop, reopened the cloud accounts, and began documenting everything. Dates, dollar amounts, transfers. I downloaded PDFs of every file, stored backups onto a separate hard drive, and just for good measure, printed hard copies and tucked them into a locked drawer. By the time the sun started to set, the neat little bubble Greg and Mia had built for themselves was thoroughly deflated. They just didn't know it yet. And I wasn't done. The next morning, I made an appointment with Mr. Cohen, our old financial advisor. Warren had trusted him for years. He was sharp, discreet, and most importantly, not easily swayed by a sob story or a charming smile. I dressed simply. Slacks, a soft sweater, nothing flashy. I wanted to look exactly like what they saw me as, a sweet aging widow. Invisible, forgettable. Let them underestimate me one more time. The drive downtown was quiet. The trees along Mill Street were starting to turn leaves, painting the sidewalks in gold and crimson. Funny how life outside keeps humming along while yours feels like it's caving in. Mr. Cohen greeted me with that same measured calm he'd always had. "Helen?" he said, rising to shake my hand. "What brings you in?" I didn't mince words. "I need to see every account tied to my name," I said, my voice steady. "All of it." His brows lifted slightly, but he didn't question me. Instead, he opened his laptop and began pulling up the details. And as the pages loaded line by line, confirmation settled in. Greg had buried me in liability. Business loans, high-risk investments, even property liens I never approved. I exhaled slowly. Not shocked anymore, just resolved. Mr. Cohen's expression tightened as he reviewed the files. "Helen, I don't want to alarm you, but this isn't just careless. It's calculated." "I know," I said softly. "And you didn't authorize this." I shook my head. He sat back, folding his hands. "You'll need legal counsel. Now." Already ahead of him, that sharp, cold calm never left me as I walked out of his office. The leaves crunched beneath my feet, the crisp autumn air biting at my cheeks. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I wouldn't fight. But I was done playing the fool. And this was just the beginning. It's funny how life prepares you for storms without you even realizing it. Warren used to joke that I was part squirrel, always tucking things away, organizing, planning, double-checking. Back then, I thought it was just a quirk. Now, it was my lifeline. By the time I left Mr. Cohen's office, I already had a plan forming. First stop, legal backup. The next morning, I sat across from attorney Lila Brennan in her sunlit office downtown. She was sharp in that quiet, precise way that makes you sit up straighter. Early 50s, no-nonsense hair, pulled back, eyes that didn't miss much. I explained everything. The loans, the forged authorizations, the power of attorney I'd signed without fully understanding the consequences. And most importantly, the recording. The one from the cafe where Greg had unknowingly confirmed every ugly truth. Lila listened without interrupting. Her pen scratched quietly across a legal pad as I spoke, her expression unreadable. When I finally stopped, she set the pen down, steepled her fingers, and looked me square in the eye. "They've exploited you, Mrs. Lawson," she said plainly, "and not by accident." This was deliberate. Hearing it out loud sent a small, bitter chill down my spine. But I was past tears now. "What are my options?" I asked, voice steady. "We start by revoking the power of attorney." "Today," Lila replied. "That strips their access immediately." I nodded. "Next, we freeze the joint accounts, initiate a full audit, and flag any property titles for review. You still have legal ownership rights over the house. That's leverage they didn't expect. And the investments," she smiled faintly. "That's where we get creative." We spent the next 2 hours going over every detail, Lila laying out step by step how we'd build a legal wall between me and the mess Greg and Mia created. It wasn't going to be quick. It wasn't going to be clean. But it would be done. By the time I left her office, a folder of signed documents tucked safely under my arm, that cold, sharp calm had settled into something stronger. Determination. The drive home was quiet. My neighborhood looked exactly the same: neat lawns, American flags, fluttering kids riding bikes. Normal. But inside my house, the storm was brewing. Willow greeted me at the door, weaving between my ankles. I scooped her up, her warm little body grounding me. "We're getting our house back, sweetheart," I whispered. "Every inch of it." I made tea, plain, no honey. The sweetness wasn't comforting anymore. Then I started making calls. The banks, the mortgage company, the brokerage firm. Each conversation added another layer of protection. Account freezes, access restrictions, notations on my profile. Only the primary account holder may authorize changes. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt steady. And just in time. That evening my phone buzzed. Greg. His name lit up the screen like a warning flare. I let it ring once. Twice. Then answered, keeping my tone light. "Hi, sweetheart." "Hey, Mom," he replied, his voice syrupy smooth. Too smooth. "How are you doing?" It was all small talk at first. The baby, Mia, the weather. But I could hear it. That careful undercurrent of manipulation, the way he was setting the stage. And right on cue, he got to it. "Listen, I've been thinking. There's this new opportunity," he began, voice dropping into that familiar, persuasive register. "It's really exciting. But we need a little more liquidity to finalize our position." I smiled to myself, pressing record on the small device beside me. "Liquidity," I repeated softly. "Such a fancy word." He chuckled nervously. "It's nothing big, Mom. Just a short-term thing. Barely even a favor." "How much?" $200,000, he said breezy. "As you please. It's just to bridge a gap. And with your accounts structured how they are, easy peasy." I sipped my tea, eyes narrowing. "Of course," I said sweetly. "Let's meet in person to go over everything." A beat of hesitation on his end. I could practically hear the gears turning. Sure, he finally said. "Tomorrow work." "Perfect," I replied. "Somewhere public, though the baby gets fussy at home," he agreed. We hung up, and as the line went dead, I set my tea down, the recorder still blinking red. Greg thought he was still in control. But tomorrow he was walking straight into the web I'd been quietly spinning. And this time, I held the scissors. The next morning, I arrived at Meadowlark Café 20 minutes early. It's one of those places that tries hard to look effortless. Distressed wood tables, Edison bulbs hanging low, mismatched chairs that probably cost more than my first car. Mia loved this spot. Rustic charm, she called it. I chose a table tucked in the corner, my back to the wall, clear view of the entrance. Control. That's what Warren always said. In any conversation, know your exits, know your angles. I used to roll my eyes at him. Turns out, old habits like his, they save you when your world flips upside down. The waitress, college kid friendly, brought me a pot of tea. I thanked her, keeping my eyes on the door. My purse sat on the table beside me, the tiny recorder tucked inside, already rolling. Greg arrived on time. Of course he did. He was always punctual when he needed something. He spotted me immediately, that familiar grin plastered across his face. The same grin that once melted me as a young mother. The same grin that now made my stomach twist, but not for the same reasons. "Mom," he greeted, leaning down to kiss my cheek. His cologne was strong, expensive. Probably paid for with money pulled from one of my accounts. "You look great," he added, sliding into the chair across from me. "Thank you, sweetheart." "You too," I replied, keeping my tone warm, practiced. The waitress returned, took his coffee order, and we made polite small talk. The baby, the weather, his latest work project, but I could see the tension beneath his easy smile. He was calculating, weighing when to pivot the conversation to the real reason we were here. He didn't wait long. "Listen, Mom," he started, lowering his voice, folding his hands like we were co-conspirators in some grand plan. "I really appreciate you meeting me like this." I nodded, letting him feel comfortable. "You've always been my rock," he continued, voice syrupy. "You've supported me, believed in me, and I know you want what's best for our family." I tilted my head. "Of course I do. This opportunity," he said, leaning in slightly. "It's solid. We've done our homework. The returns are nearly guaranteed. But to lock it in, we need to move quickly." I sipped my tea. "How much are we talking?" $200,000, he answered smoothly, like we were discussing grocery money. Short-term, completely covered by the assets we've built. With the accounts structured how they are, it's basically seamless. My stomach turned at his choice of words. "We've built." As if I'd been an active, willing partner. As if he hadn't manipulated every signature, every document, every ounce of trust I gave him. I set my teacup down gently. "You've already prepared the paperwork, I assume?" I asked softly. Greg smiled, quick, eager. "Of course. You know me, always thorough. Better to have it ready just in case. And Mia's on board." "Absolutely," he confirmed without missing a beat. "We're a team." The team speech again. The one that used to warm me. Now it rang as hollow as his promises. I let a pause stretch between us. Let him fidget just slightly. Then I placed my hand gently over his. "Sweetheart," I said, voice low. "Even I appreciate you thinking of me for this. Truly. But you know how I am. I like to be thorough, too." Greg's smile faltered for just a moment, barely noticeable if you weren't looking for it. "Of course," he replied quickly, masking the slip. "Take all the time you need." I squeezed his hand gently, then withdrew mine. He thought he still had me. He thought the old script was playing out as usual. Butter me up, press the right buttons, walk away with what he wanted. But this wasn't the same mother he'd been playing for a fool. This time I was the one writing the script. When we stood to leave, he hugged me. I let him. Held him for just a second longer than necessary, feeling the irony in how a hug, once an act of comfort, now felt like armor. The recorder in my purse was still blinking steadily. Every word, every lie, every carefully rehearsed manipulation, captured. I watched him walk out of the café, shoulders squared, confident in his deception. And I smiled to myself, because he'd just handed me exactly what I needed. It's funny how the mind clings to routines even when everything around you starts to fall apart. The next morning, I made tea. Same chipped mug, same quiet kitchen. Only this time, my hands weren't shaking. The bitterness of betrayal had settled into something steadier. Purpose. Cold, deliberate purpose. The documents Greg had handed me sat neatly on the kitchen table. I hadn't even opened them yet. I didn't need to. The recorder from yesterday's meeting told me everything I needed to know. But I'd read them anyway. Thoroughness was my new religion. Before I got to that, though, I called Lila Brennan, my attorney. She picked up on the second ring. "Morning, Mrs. Lawson," she greeted, professional as ever. I assumed the meeting went as expected. I couldn't help a small smile. "Better." He practically narrated his entire scheme into my recorder. Lila's chuckle was dry quiet. "Good. Let's get started." We spent the next hour reviewing the steps already in motion. Power of attorney, formally revoked. Joint accounts, frozen. Property deeds flagged for transfer. And the new piece, the recording. "Keep it safe," Lila instructed. "Digital copy. Offsite backup. That recording may be the final nail if this escalates legally." "It's already escalated," I said softly. "He just doesn't know it yet." After we hung up, I sat down at the table, opened Greg's folder, and flipped through the pages. It was exactly what I expected. A maze of legal jargon, buried clauses, blank signature lines, all designed to make me feel like I was part of the plan, while handing them complete control. I read every word, taking notes, circling the subtle landmines. Asset seizure rights, additional guarantor clauses, personal liability waivers. They'd planned for everything except for me wising up. The old me. She would have smiled, signed, thanked them for including her. The new me. I picked up my pen and wrote 2 simple words across the top of the packet, nice try. That evening, I took a slow walk around the house. The same house Warren and I had built together. The same walls that held our wedding photos, our children's milestones, the echoes of laughter and quiet Sunday afternoons. It all looked the same, but it wasn't, not after what I'd uncovered. They weren't just trying to bleed me dry. They were erasing me, using my kindness, my grief, my trust as tools to quietly replace me in my own life. But this wasn't over. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at Warren's old desk, and opened the fireproof safe tucked beneath. Inside, everything they didn't expect me to have. Original mortgage documents, bank statements, insurance policies, and now, the freshly signed revocation papers notarized and filed. I tucked the recorder inside, too safe beneath the layers of paper and steel. And then I called the mortgage company. The woman on the other end, Sandra, was kind, professional. I explained that I was initiating a quiet ownership restructuring. She didn't ask questions, just noted my file, offered next steps, and scheduled a call with the senior representative. Every piece was falling into place. By the time I hung up, the sky outside was dark, the house quiet. Willow curled at my feet, her tail flicking, as if even she sensed the shift. I stood locking the safe and whispered to myself, steady as stone, "They think I'm still asleep." I smiled faintly. Good, because when they finally realized I wasn't, it would be far too late. There's a certain thrill that comes with being underestimated, like holding a royal flush in your hand while the person across the table smirks, thinking they've already won. That's exactly how I felt walking into the cafe that next afternoon. This time, though, it wasn't Meadowlark Cafe with its rustic charm and overpriced muffins. No, Greg had chosen the location, a sleek little bistro downtown. Glass walls, chrome fixtures, designer chairs that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. He thought it sent a message that he was successful, confident, untouchable. What he didn't know, I'd already stripped away every thread of that illusion. I spotted him immediately tucked into a booth near the back, nursing a black coffee. His shoulders were relaxed, his posture easy. But I saw it, the tightness in his jaw, the nervous twitch of his thumb tapping against the cup. I slid into the booth across from him, my recorder quietly tucked into my purse, already rolling. "Hey, Mom," he greeted, flashing that practiced grin. "You look good." I smiled politely, noting the faint bags under his eyes. "So do you." The waitress came by, took my tea order, and retreated. Greg wasted no time. "So, have you had a chance to look everything over?" he asked, keeping his voice casual, but I could hear the edge beneath it. The pressure. "I have," I replied, reaching into my bag. "Very thorough." I handed him the folder, the same one he'd given me days earlier, now neatly annotated with red pen. Circles, arrows, margin notes. A roadmap of every hidden clause, every trap he thought I wouldn't notice. His face faltered for just a second as he flipped through the pages. "You've been busy," he remarked, forcing a chuckle. "Had some help," I replied simply, watching his eyes flicker with uncertainty. Lila's name didn't need to be spoken. He could feel her presence in every circled paragraph. "I'm glad you're being careful," Greg continued, trying to recover. "It's a lot of money after all, and I wouldn't want you to feel rushed." I sipped my tea. "No rush, but there's something I want to be clear on." His gaze met mine, a flicker of caution now behind the charm. "You've structured every part of this to make me believe I'm a partner," I began softly. "But I'm not, am I? I'm collateral. A name on paper, a source of credit." Greg opened his mouth, but I held up a hand, my voice still calm. "I listened to the cafe recording, Greg. Every word you said. Every time you called me naive. Every time Mia laughed behind my back." His face blanched, the color draining from his cheeks like water from a broken faucet. "You what?" "You didn't disconnect the call, sweetheart." I cut in gently. "I heard everything. He froze, the weight of realization crashing down like a tidal wave. "You've been using me," I continued, keeping my tone even. "For years, wrapping it up in sweet words and baby pictures, and I let you." The silence stretched between us taut and brittle. "But here's the thing," I added, leaning in, slightly lowering my voice. "I'm done." Greg's eyes darted, calculating, but his confidence had cracked. I could see it, the frantic search for a way out. "I've already revoked your access, frozen the accounts, reclaimed the property. Your little empire?" I smiled faintly. "It's built on sand." The waitress returned, setting down my tea. The clink of ceramic was the only sound as Greg sat there stunned, stripped of the narrative he'd spent years constructing. You can't," he finally stammered, his words tripping over themselves. "Oh, but I have," I replied calmly. "And if you so much as push this, the recordings, the financial records, the legal filings, they're ready to go to the authorities." The color that had drained from his face returned in blotchy patches of frustration and fear. I picked up my teacup, took a slow sip, and stood. "Have a nice afternoon, Greg." And with that, I walked away, leaving him in the wreckage of his own deception. You'd think there'd be some satisfaction in watching someone like Greg squirm, wouldn't you? Maybe years ago, I would have imagined that moment as pure triumph, me standing tall, him folding under the weight of his own lies. But when I walked out to that café, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. Done playing along. Done doubting myself. Done carrying the weight of a family that saw me as nothing but a convenience. The cool autumn air hit my face as I stepped onto the sidewalk, grounding me. I could still feel Greg's stunned silence lingering behind me, but I didn't look back. I had bigger things to do now. By the time I got home, the final pieces were already in motion. Lila had filed the official revocation of Greg's power of attorney. The banks confirmed the freezes were complete. The property restructuring paperwork, processing. Everything that had quietly slipped out of my hands over the past few years. I was pulling it all back. And Greg, well, he had no idea just how thoroughly the walls were closing in. Until that evening, it started with a phone call. Not to me, to Mia. I know because about 10 minutes after the sunset, I heard the screech of tires in my driveway and the sound of the front doorbell, sharp and insistent. I didn't jump. I didn't even rush. I just poured another cup of tea, tucked my recorder into my pocket, and opened the door. Mia stood there, arms crossed, eyes wild with panic and fury in equal measure. Behind her, Greg paced like a caged animal, jaw clenched so tight I could practically hear his teeth grinding. "We need to talk," Mia snapped. I leaned casually against the doorframe. "Do we?" "You froze our accounts," she hissed. "The credit cards, the business funds, the mortgage company called. What are you doing?" I shrugged. "Cleaning house." Greg stepped forward, his face flushed. "You've gone too far, Mom. You're ruining everything." I laughed softly, the sound dry as autumn leaves underfoot. "I'm ruining everything," I repeated, shaking my head. "Sweetheart, I'm fixing what you broke." Mia's facade cracked for just a second. "We trusted you." "No, you used me," I corrected, voice calm but firm. "There's a difference." Greg's fists clenched at his sides. "You're destroying our family." I met his eyes, steady and unflinching. "You destroyed this family the moment you saw me as a resource, not a person." The silence stretched between us, taut with years of hidden resentment and quiet manipulation, finally dragged into the light. "We're giving you one chance," Mia said, her voice tight. "Undo this. Unfreeze the accounts. Sign the papers." I tilted my head, almost amused. "Or what?" Greg's face contorted with frustration. "You'll regret this." Funny, I mused. That's exactly what I thought after that little phone call slip-up. Their faces paled. "You think I don't have everything documented?" I continued. "The recordings, the financial records, the legal proof. You've left a paper trail even a blind man could follow." Greg opened his mouth, but I cut him off with a raised hand. "Go home," I said softly. "This conversation's over." Mia scoffed, grabbing Greg's arm. "You're making a mistake." "No," I corrected, closing the door. "I'm correcting one." The lock clicked into place, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the house settle around me. Steady. Quiet. Mine. They thought they could intimidate me, but this wasn't the old, trusting, grieving woman they'd been manipulating for years. This was the woman rebuilding her life brick by brick, and they were officially locked out. The worst part about betrayal isn't the act itself. It's the quiet, lingering mess that follows. The awkward phone calls, the desperate texts, the way people look at you sideways at the grocery store because suddenly your family dramas spilled past the front door. But by the end of that week, I stopped caring. Greg and Mia, on the other hand, they were unraveling. It started small. A voicemail from Greg. His voice thinly veiled with concern layered with practiced warmth. "Mom, can we just hit pause on all this? You're upset. I get it, but let's not do anything permanent. We're family, remember?" I didn't respond. A day later, Mia texted, "Helen, this is all a misunderstanding. You freezing the accounts, it hurts the baby's future too, you know?" Ah, the baby card, their favorite tool. I left the message unread. The following day, Greg called again. This time, his tone cracked under the weight of fear. "I can't access the business funds. Our credit lines are frozen. Do you understand how this looks? How this affects my reputation?" Oh, I understood perfectly. By then, Lila had already filed every revocation, notified every institution, and ensured that my estate, the very foundation of their scheme, was legally shielded. The walls they'd built around me, I'd torn them down. And in their place, I was building my own fortress. The real storm came the next week. A formal letter from the mortgage company arrived at Greg and Mia's house. I knew because Mia called, her voice sharp, panicked. "They're saying the property's being restructured, that we need to provide updated ownership documents, that payments may be reassessed. What did you do?" I stirred my tea, watching the leaves swirl in the cup. "I protected myself." I answered simply. "You're jeopardizing everything." "No, Mia," I corrected. "I'm taking back what's mine." Her silence was short-lived. The next day, Greg showed up at my front door. Not with flowers, not with an apology, with anger. I spotted him through the window, pacing the porch like a man cornered. His polished confidence was gone, replaced by frustration and fear. I opened the door recorder, already running in my pocket. "We need to talk," he said, jaw clenched. "Funny," I replied. "You didn't feel that way when you were siphoning off my accounts." His nostrils flared. "You're being dramatic." "No, Greg, I'm being thorough. We trusted you." "Stop!" I cut in, my voice firm. "You trusted I wouldn't notice. You trusted I'd stay quiet. You trusted I'd keep handing over my life while you built yours on top of it." He hesitated, but only for a moment. "You're making this ugly." I smiled faintly. "Sweetheart, I'm making this fair." The silence stretched. "Look," he tried again, softening his tone. "You've made your point. You've flexed your legal muscles. Can we just undo all this? Go back to normal?" I stared at him, really stared. The familiar lines of his face, the echo of the boy I once rocked to sleep. And yet the man standing in front of me, he wasn't my son anymore. Not in the ways that mattered. "There's no going back," I said quietly. "Only forward." His face twisted with frustration, realization dawning that this time I wasn't bluffing. "You'll regret this," he warned, turning on his heel. But as I closed the door behind him, locking it tight, I knew I wouldn't regret a single thing, because the real regret, that was his to carry now. The thing about people like Greg and Mia, they don't go quietly. I knew that the moment I shut the door behind him, heard the sharp click of the lock, and watched him storm down the front steps like the ground was about to give way beneath him. It wasn't over. Not yet. And sure enough, the fallout began the very next morning. It started with a voicemail from Greg, longer this time, more desperate, his usual mask of calm slipping between every sentence. "Mom, you don't understand what you've done," he began, his voice low but tight, like he was barely keeping his cool. "This isn't just about us now. The business is tied up. The investors are panicking. You've made a mess, and it's your name on half the paperwork. Remember, you're not untouchable in this." I listened to the whole message, let it sink in like water into dry soil. It wasn't a threat exactly, but it wasn't a plea either. It was that middle ground manipulators love to walk. A little fear, a little guilt, a little nudge, hoping I'd stumble back into their control. I saved the voicemail to my folder of evidence, filed it under predictable. Lila called that afternoon. "They'll push," she warned, her voice calm but firm. "You've stripped their access, their security blanket. People like that, they scramble. They get reckless. I sipped my tea, staring out the window at the wind shaking the autumn leaves from the oak trees. Let them scramble, I replied. I've been cleaning up their recklessness for years. I'm done. And sure enough, as the days passed, their panic morphed into something nastier. First, a barrage of texts from Mia, sweet on the surface, but each one dripping with passive-aggressive undertones. We're so heartbroken you don't trust us. This is hurting the whole family, Helen. The baby misses you. Then they escalated. Mia showed up at my front door. No makeup this time. No carefully rehearsed smile. Just bitterness clinging to her features like smoke. You've made your point, she snapped, arms crossed, foot tapping impatiently on my porch. Now undo it. I didn't open the screen door. Didn't invite her in. Mia, I said calmly. You never understood, did you? You thought all those family dinners, the gifts, the smiles, they were investments, insurance. Keep me close, keep me quiet. She scoffed, eyes narrowing. You're bitter. No, I corrected, I'm awake. The silence stretched. You're not young forever, she added, her voice low, sharp as glass. You're going to need help one day. Don't burn bridges you'll regret. I met her gaze, steady, unflinching. You mean the bridge you and Greg used to bleed me dry? She shifted just slightly, the crack in her confidence showing. You've lost control, she tried again. No, I said softly. I've finally taken it back. She left after that muttering under her breath. And I went back inside, locked the door, and made another note in my little leather notebook. Attempted intimidation recorded, saved. I knew they'd keep pushing, but every time they did, they tightened the noose around their own plan. And me, I stayed right where I belonged, in control. By the end of the month, it wasn't just Greg and Mia who felt the walls closing in. It was their whole little house of cards. Funny how people like them so careful with appearances never realize how loud their downfall can be. It started small. Whispers in town. A neighbor mentioned seeing foreclosure notices in Greg's mailbox. One of Mia's friends from her book club made a not-so-subtle remark about financial troubles. I didn't gloat. I didn't spread rumors. I didn't have to. Truth has a way of surfacing all on its own. Their accounts were frozen. Their access revoked. The mortgage restructuring officially underway. And with each passing day, their carefully polished image of success cracked a little more. They tried to cover it up at first. New photos of the baby posted online. Filtered smiles. Hashtags about family first and blessed. But the cracks showed. Late-night arguments on their front porch. Greg's car missing for days at a time, likely chasing down investors or patching business holes I'd exposed. Mia grocery shopping with coupons, her smile brittle at the checkout line. And then, the real blow. The investigators showed up, not at my door, at theirs. I watched from my living room window, hidden behind the sheer curtains, as two plainclothes officers knocked on their front door one crisp Tuesday morning. Greg answered, his face, drawn eyes wary. Mia hovered behind him, her arms crossed, lips pressed thin. The officers spoke calmly, professionally. I couldn't hear the words, but I recognized the paperwork. Fraud. Financial abuse. Identity misuse. Everything Lila and I had built into our legal case, it was unfolding exactly as planned. They never looked toward my house, never acknowledged me watching. But I saw the panic settle in their shoulders, the defeated slump as they closed the door behind the investigators. The fallout wasn't just legal, it was personal. Their friends distanced themselves. Investors pulled out. Greg's reputation, the shiny self-made image, tarnished beyond repair. And through it all, I stayed quiet, calm, unshaken. A few days later, a package arrived at my doorstep. No return address. Just my name, neatly printed. Inside, a letter from Greg, handwritten. The first thing he'd actually written by hand in years. It reeked of desperation. Mom, I never wanted this. I made mistakes. I was trying to build something for us, for the baby. You've always been my rock. Please, let's fix this. We're still family. No ownership of the lies. No apology for the manipulation. Just carefully crafted guilt and half-truths. I folded the letter, neatly tucked it into my evidence folder, and placed it in the safe with everything else. Because words, they didn't mean much anymore. Actions did. And my actions, they were finally speaking for themselves. It was strange, really, how quickly the quiet returned once the storm passed. No more late-night calls from Greg. No desperate knocks on the door. No guilt-laced texts from Mia. Just silence. It should have felt lonely, but it didn't. It felt clean. Lila called that Thursday afternoon. Her voice carried that steady confidence I'd come to lean on over the past few weeks. "The state's case is moving forward," she reported. "Greg's officially under investigation for fraudulent use of your identity, unauthorized financial activity, and elder financial exploitation." I exhaled slowly, staring out at the bare branches of the oak trees swaying in the front yard. "And Mia," Lila paused. "She's been named as a cooperating party, likely to avoid charges herself." I nodded, unsurprised. Mia was never built for consequences. The moment the foundation cracked, she bailed self-preservation over loyalty every time. "They're scrambling," Lila added, "trying to minimize the damage. But it's beyond salvaging." A small smile touched my lips. Good. I spent that evening cleaning out the house. Old photo frames tucked into drawers. Legal documents reorganized. Warren's notebook back in its rightful place. Worn but intact, a quiet reminder that I'd come full circle. Willow followed me from room to room, tail flicking, eyes alert. Even she seemed calmer these days, as if the house itself had exhaled. Later, I stood by the front window, watching the last traces of daylight fade. A figure appeared on the sidewalk. Greg. No baby, no Mia. Just him, shoulders hunched, hands shoved deep into his coat pockets. He didn't come up the steps. Didn't knock. Just stood there, staring at the house like it was some museum relic he no longer belonged to. For a moment, I thought about going out there, facing him, saying, "What?" But I didn't. I let the moment stretch quiet and heavy. He lingered for a while, shifting his weight, glancing up at the windows. Then slowly he turned and walked away, his figure disappearing down the street. I watched until he was gone, then drew the curtains closed. It wasn't closure, but it was enough. The next morning, I finalized the paperwork with Leela. The property officially transferred into a protected trust, ironclad, irreversible. The accounts secure. The legal filings complete. And my life, finally, mine again. For the first time in months, I brewed my tea with honey. A small sweetness returned. I sat at the kitchen table, Willow purring at my feet, and exhaled. This wasn't victory. It was peace, and I'd earned every quiet second of it. The first real snowfall came earlier than expected that year. I woke to a quiet blanket of white covering the lawn, the rooftops, the empty swing set down the street. It softened everything, even the sharp edges of the past few months. Funny how nature can do that. Erase the mess, if only for a moment. I pulled on my coat and boots, stepping outside into the stillness. The snow crunched beneath my feet, fresh and untouched. Willow pressed her nose against the window from inside, watching me with mild feline judgment. Across the street, the old Larson house sat vacant, a for sale sign tilting in the front yard. Another casualty of over-leveraged ambition, I supposed. I took a slow walk down the block, my breath visible in the cold morning air. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, almost exactly the way Warren and I imagined it would be when we first moved here all those years ago. Back then, I never could have pictured the chaos that would unfold. The betrayals, the heartache, the quiet war I'd have to wage just to protect what we built. But now I saw it clearly. Control isn't something you ask for. It's something you take back. When I returned home, the mailbox was stuffed with letters, holiday cards from old friends, a catalog or two, and tucked between them, a plain white envelope, no return address. Inside, a single piece of paper. Greg's handwriting. Sloppier this time. Shaky. "You've made your point. I'm done fighting. I'm sorry." No excuses this time. No manipulation. Just a quiet, pitiful concession. I folded the letter, placed it in my evidence folder, and tucked it away. Because forgiveness, that comes on my terms now, not his. Lila called that afternoon to confirm the last legal filings had processed. "The trust is sealed," she reported. "The house, the accounts, your estate, it's all protected. And Greg, his assets are frozen. His business partners have pulled out. The investigation's ongoing, but His empire? It's done. I thanked her, set the phone down, and looked around my kitchen. It wasn't just a house. It was mine again. All of it. I brewed tea, with honey this time. A small return to sweetness earned, not handed over. And as I stood there watching the snow fall beyond the window, I realized this wasn't just the end of their scheme. It was the beginning of my life, on my terms. Clean, quiet, unapologetically mine. The quiet after a storm. It's never as empty as people think. It hums with the soft settling of things falling back into place. It buzzes with the steady return of breath, of rhythm, of knowing your feet are planted somewhere solid again. That's what my house felt like now. Not haunted, not bruised, just steady. I spent those final days of December moving through the house like I used to, when Warren was still alive. Slow, intentional, folding laundry, dusting bookshelves, rearranging the pantry in the overly meticulous way he always teased me for. Willow followed me room to room, curling in sunspots, napping on freshly made beds. I updated my estate plan with Leela, redrafted my will, created the kind of legacy paperwork I should have done years ago. Not out of fear now, but out of clarity. For the first time, my future, what I left behind, how my life was organized, wasn't tangled up in someone else's ambition. It was mine. The neighborhood settled into its usual winter rhythm. Holiday lights twinkled on porches. Children made snow angels in front yards. Even the old Larson place got a new family, young couple, sweet little boy with an unruly mop of curls. Reminded me of Greg before life twisted his priorities. I didn't dwell on it long. Some memories, like faded Polaroids, are better left tucked in a drawer. The final call from the investigator came mid-January. The case against Greg solid. The financial abuse documented. The fraudulent activity traced. The legal protections airtight. They won't be able to access or contest your estate moving forward, the officer confirmed. You've insulated yourself well. I thanked him, ended the call, and let the weight of those words sink in. Insulated, protected, free. A few weeks later, Greg sent one final letter. Not a plea, not a threat, just defeated words scrawled messily on lined paper. I hope you're happy. You destroyed everything. I read it once, set it down, and felt nothing. Because I hadn't destroyed anything. I'd rebuilt, without fanfare, without anger, without needing anyone's permission. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, pulled Warren's old quilt from the linen closet, and settled onto the porch swing. The stars were sharp and clear above me, the cold biting, but refreshing. Willow perched beside me, her purring steady. For the first time in a long, long while, I wasn't afraid of the quiet. It wasn't empty anymore. It was peace. Mine. All along I thought love meant sacrifice. That family meant giving until there was nothing left. But I know better now. Real love doesn't drain you dry. Real family doesn't build their success on your silence. And real strength, it comes when you finally stop handing over the keys to your own life. I held mine now, and I wasn't letting go. It's quiet now. The kind of quiet that wraps around you soft and steady, not suffocating. Funny how the echoes of chaos can take so long to fade, but eventually they do. The house feels different, not because the walls changed or the furniture moved, but because the weight's gone. The silent dread that used to hang in the corners, that fear of misplaced trust, of empty smiles, of watching everything I built slip through my fingers, it's gone. The kitchen clock ticks in steady rhythm. Willow's soft breathing rises and falls as she sleeps curled beside me. The world outside hums along oblivious. And me, I've stopped waiting for the next shoe to drop. Stopped bracing for manipulation disguised as love. Stopped apologizing for protecting what's mine. There's no grand ending here. No parade, no applause, just steady, earned peace. I take another sip of tea honey swirling in the warmth. The snow outside glows faintly under the moonlight. The porch swing creaks gently in the wind, and for the first time in a long time, I feel safe. No more second guessing. No more giving away pieces of myself just to keep the peace. No more underestimating the quiet strength I carry. This is enough. And tonight, as the house settles and the winter wind whispers against the windows, I remind myself, I survived, I rebuilt, I stayed standing, and I did it all. quietly, soft as snowfall, sharp as ice, steady as stone. Sleep well, sweetheart.